My name's Dan Yoder. I'm with Sign Art Studio. And I wanted to start this podcast to highlight some of the more traditional aspects of this industry. We get into, we'll be talking about sign painting, glass gilding, neon. We'll also get into at some point, I'm sure, some of the more modern stuff that we do with LED signs and that sort of thing. But mainly want to focus on the traditional aspects and some of my mentors, my heroes. One that we have here, Ashley Bishop. Welcome, Ashley Bishop. Why don't you tell everybody your name, your company, and where you're out of?
Well, first of all, Dan, thanks so much for asking me on. I'm humbled, and to know that I've inspired you in some way is extremely special. I'm Ash Bishop. I'm just outside London in England, and I run a company called the Brilliant Sign Company. I've been doing it for about 25, nearly 30 years now, and still learning every day.
Yeah. And you mainly are doing glass signs. I mean, I obviously follow you on Instagram. I guess is that primarily what you're doing, or you're just all painted, of course, right?
I mean, before COVID, the majority of our work was probably jobbing sign writing for bigger brands. So, for instance, we had Pret a Manger, who were they've got about 600 shops in the UK, and they're a sandwich coffee chain.
Okay.
But since their start, they pretty much had their internal decorations hand painted. So we were doing all of their shops, and that was a 90-hour-a-week commitment, really, for many years. And I loved it because it was it felt like old school sign writing. It felt like there wasn't another way of doing it for them, if you see what I mean. We felt like we had a big sign contract, and we were back in perhaps the 60s or 70s,
right,
driving around painting, and I managed to rope in every letterhead pretty much in the country and a few overseas.
Right.
There's many American lads that I dragged out in the middle of the night to come and help me in Liverpool or London or wherever we might have been that day.
Right.
So that was the majority of the work, and then probably a third of the work was the nice glass fascias. And Eton College, which I've worked at since you came over in 2002.
Yep.
Honours boards, site boards, site maintenance and heritage sort of maintenance on lettering and gold leaf and that. But now, since COVID, there's been definitely a massive drop off in the high street work, but there's loads of glass stuff, and I find myself more and more doing restorations and replications of old brewers mirrors or glass fascias or brewers tablets, which are the glass little black gold little signs. They went either side of the doors to pubs.
Sure. Yep.
So that's where the work is now, really, in those sort of things.
Right on. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I've always just appreciated the work that you do because it's there's so much history behind it. I mean, the methods that you're using have been around for, I mean, how long are we talking here on some of these glass pieces?
Signs started really in 1888, and they essentially mechanized the old glass signage, which I imagine had been around about 20 years before that, perhaps 1860s. As soon as they could get plate glass, glass became a substrate for signs. So Brilliant Signs took that technique and they kind of mechanized it by using screen printing, by making presses. So they would make molds to press copper, very fine shim copper, to look like a carved letter. And their aim was always quicker, last longer, cheaper. And that's kind of been some of my motivation. And I need to compete. I don't want to make signs that are too expensive that a shopkeeper can't have them.
Sure.
So it's been my sort of work for the last 20 years to find ways of making the fascia signs that they compete in price with like a mid-range, higher end aluminium tray, built up
Sure.
letter, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And they usually come in cheaper than that. So that's my aim, and that's always been my aim. I'm not into pricing people out of the market. I want them to have them rather than not have them.
Well, that's neat, because I know they're time consuming, and I'm sure that is the challenge, is how do you do this in a way that's efficient enough for you, to be able to provide a competitive price. So, well, cool, man. I appreciate that. So I want to just, how'd you get into the sign industry? How did this all happen for you?
Yeah. Well, that was I went a long way around. Ever since I was probably, I don't know, far back as I can remember, all I wanted to do really was be a pilot in the Air Force. And I had on the side, as I got a little bit older, perhaps 12, 13, an interest in gypsy caravans.
Okay. Yep.
And also my mum's granddad was a sign writer and tattooist in Slough.
Really?
So my mum, just up the road.
Tattooist.
Yeah.
Right on. That's cool.
Yeah, he was that generation of working class lads who had an artistic gift, but the World War One and the realities of everyday life probably interrupted an outlet for it. So a lot of those gifted sort of young lads like him became sort of penny artists, making little boards for people's houses. They would paint signs. They would do anything that they could put their creative talents into with paint. And I think he was one of them.
Okay.
And,
awesome. That's crazy.
So I got brought up with stories by my nan and my mum about him.
Yeah.
So that's a seed, I'd say. But the gypsy caravans were probably the biggest influence. I met Sarah, my wife, when I was 16, and she kind of was into them as well. And that took us on a journey of sort of restoring them and learning how to paint them. But if you'd have said to me that's what you'd do for a living, I would have thought you were mad. I mean, I went to university to go in the RAF. I flew for 3 years in the RAF. I did a law degree, and my eyes started to go with just at the end of my degree. And at that point, I had to take another medical, and it was in the air whether I would be able to fly. And the case was at that point, which wasn't long after the Berlin Wall, there weren't many jobs for pilots, so you could be hanging around for a year or so, 2 years. So I just went straight into the army from there. Did a little bit in the army, and then a very uneventful bit in the army. I mean, at that time we weren't all over it was probably the most benign bit of history, the mid 90s. So I didn't know much there, came out and then decided, what am I going to do? And I literally tossed a coin between being a barrister, which I suppose you would call an attorney, or a sign writer. And it came down on the sign writing side of the coin.
Well, I think the world is happy you chose the latter, Ash.
I certainly am. I don't think an office job was for me.
Right. I can't see you as a lawyer, to be honest. It just I can't have that in my mind's eye.
No, I don't blame you. I'll use the eye bleach to get that out. But I love the academics of it. I've got to say, I absolutely loved doing my degree, which was a complete fluke that I did it, but I went with it. But that's about as much as I needed, I think, in hindsight.
Sure. So did you you went to work for a shop, I imagine then? How did you get, up?
We were pretty lucky in that just up the road in West London, actually about 400 meters or 600 feet from the college, there was a college, and 600 feet from it was Brilliant Signs' old works. Okay. And they used to judge the college course. So it's a building, a trade school, what you would call a trade school, and it still taught traditional sign writing in the painting and decorating department. So cool. Sarah and I enrolled, and we did a year of class and took a city and guilds. And then from that, we didn't work with anyone. We just went straight into, doing signs here at East Burnham. But
cool.
I bought a CNC router, a smallish one, and I bought a vinyl plotter. But at that time in the UK, no one wanted sign painting. No one. I mean, it was the only times I ever painted was honours boards, the odd antique shop, possibly the odd classic vehicle like van.
Yep.
Or what else might there have been? That was pretty much it. There was just nothing. And so we did everything that came along, whether it was CNC routing letters for other sign companies, for exhibitions.
Mm-hmm.
We did engraving. We did anything there was. Vinyl signs, some wood, lots of woodwork, lots of sort of point of sale type woodwork. Anything that kept us turning over a little bit of money. And it was hard. I mean, for many years, it was hard work.
And that was what year are we talking then?
Well, about 97 till sort of 2000-ish.
Okay.
Then I was at a dinner. I go to one sort of businessy dinner a year that my granddad's been going to since the late mid-40s.
Okay.
And then my dad went, and it's in Slough, and it's all local business people from Slough. But the meeting, it's called the Salt Hill Society. It started in the 1770s, I think 1770s or 1750s, and it's been going ever since. And the guy I happened to sit next to was the building manager of Eton College, which is our sort of one of our oldest schools where Prince Harry and William went.
Okay.
Did well for one, didn't do so well for the other, perhaps. And you got to suffer. We got to suffer that now, though, not us. He just happened to say, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a sign writer." And he said, "What, a brush sign writer?" And I said, "Well, yeah, kind of." And their sign writer who'd been there for 25 years had just died, and they couldn't find anyone. So I started working at Eton then. I think that was 2000. It was probably March 2000, and I am still, touch wood, still there all these years later.
Doing like honors boards or just anything? Anything they need.
Honours boards, estate signage. This summer they just rebuilt the school hall, and there were 500 seats in there that they had new beautiful oak seats done. So I had to number them all. And whilst it was probably the most painful job because I had to kneel down and sort of be stuck between the rows, it was fantastic. When you look back and you look up at hundreds of hand-lettered numbers all in rows, there's something really architectural and human about it. I absolutely love that job. But all summer we've been making the boards, directional signs, honours boards.
Well, those numbers on those chairs are going to be there for how the hell long, you know?
Yeah. Well, I might have to do them again one day if they get worn. But yeah, they'll always be there now. And I've touched up the old ones in the chapels. There's various chapels there, and I've gone around touching them up over the years. So someone will have the job to do that one day. But I've got to say, it was a fulfilling thing. I think there's something about when lettering goes into architecture. Yeah. It becomes more than just a normal job. You know, you feel part of the building process and part of time. Yeah. And I mean, like you did with that, what was the big sign you remade? Osium. Yeah. I mean, you know what that was like. You were putting something back and the scale of that.
Like there's a piece of us in that.
Yeah.
And everything about the process, I wanted to honor the tradition as much as I could. I laid out, redrew from photos, on a drafting board, sketched out the original design by looking at photos, and then brought it in. Obviously, we needed to get the faces done by CNC and all that. But
well, I'm all for that. I mean, like the sign game is a hard game to make money in, and the more you can streamline it, put technology to work in it, and still come out with the same results. So the guys who had done that original one would look at it and go, well, yeah, that's bang on. You've done the same thing. That's where I'm always aiming. How you get there, I really don't care about. I want you to get there with as much profit in it as possible, because it's so easy not to have any profit at all, as we all know.
Believe me, talking with Mike Chamberlain on the first one of these we did, we talked about that. It's, sometimes you, by the time you get done with a job, you're like, well, awesome. I made $10 an hour. Great.
Yeah. You did that well. You've been doing well. I think where we got nowhere near that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the challenge, and also what can get fun about it is how to get creative to execute on this and some level of efficiency, but also have I think in a lot of ways some of these projects that we get on, even if you're doing traditional stuff as you are in this day and age, they speak on where society's at almost at a point in time. They become a relic, in a certain way. And that's cool to think about. I've always, do you ever watch American Pickers?
Yeah, I
seen
love
that
it.
show?
I love it.
I have this dream in my head that 50 years from now, American Pickers is going to be on, and they're going to find a vintage sign art studio sign, and they're going to say, "Hey, these guys, they did cool shit," and just there's something romantic about that, because I nerd out. I find some of these old signs that we take down signs or whatever, and you look at them, and it almost instantly brings you back in time. It's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, you are instantly talking. You've got one foot in the past. And when I was doing, I recently for Eton, we had a load of boards to redo, and there was one that I always really liked, but it was falling apart, and it had been done by Mr. John Haynes, who was the old sign writer.
Okay.
And I never met him, but I think I've got to know him through his work. And for one of these signs, I thought, right, I'm going to actually trace every letter, every detail of it, and recreate it as a real deep dive into how did he do it, and how did he hold the brush. And after a few hours of thinking about it, drawing it and painting it, by a real concentration and feeling that connection with like other humans and how their arm had moved and why it moved like that and why the brush did that, I came a step closer. It was a really good exercise, which I couldn't say I've ever really zoned in on before and spent time really thinking about.
Yeah.
And it was such a useful thing. But it's exactly what you're talking about. You feel the past in it, and you feel the people who did it.
Absolutely. When we came over to visit and come to that meet in 2002, I remember looking at some of these fascia signs, and I remember you pointing out, I don't remember the painter's name, but it was a Roman font, and his serifs disappeared.
Oh, that was John. Yeah, that
was
would
it
have been
John?
Yeah,
the serifs were like, they would disappear into
like
nothing.
razor blades.
Yeah. And I think about, I do consider myself a sign painter. I think I posted one day on Instagram, I don't paint signs every day, but I'll always be a sign painter. So I what it takes to manipulate the brush to execute on what that guy could do. I mean, that's so much seat time and so much perfection of his craft over the years to be able to do it that way. Yeah.
I know his family, and his daughter said to me once when he was going out to the workshops, paint stuff, she said he used to say, right, I'm going to do some brain surgery. and when you look at his work, you kind of understand what he meant.
That's funny you said. I just brought this up when I was when Mike and I were talking when I was in Daytona. We were all in Daytona doing striping and Daytona Bike Week. And one of the guys said that he was watching me paint and was pinstriping somebody's bike, and he said that's a waste of talent. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he said you should have been a surgeon. So, I get what he was saying. Yeah. It certainly takes a steady hand, and but so yeah.
Well, when I could do the serifs, but when my hand comes off the brush, I shake like a dog's shite and bones. So
I know.
I'm not sure how close I want to get to someone's sort of inner layers,
right.
the nerves of the head.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm a smoker still, so I have just a little bit of the shakes to begin with. But I'm thankful for the hairs on the brush, because they act a bit like shock absorbers.
That's right. That's what I always think. Between that and a mile stick, there's enough.
Right.
There's enough suspension.
I'm a finger dragger. I go overhand and I use a maul stick. I kind of utilize all, and I think that probably speaks on, my, I guess, learning from so many different people, how to do it, and just depending on where I'm comfortable.
Well, I do the same. I always use a mile stick for lettering, but if I'm doing scrolling or sort of decoration work, I use a hand. I use my hand. I can't do it. I almost can't do it with a mile stick. I can just about, but it loses something.
Yeah, I'll typically pull out a maul stick only when there's wet paint that I got to get around, and so you did touch on this briefly, but I want to talk about Brilliant Sign Company because when we came over, there's a special story there, and I relate to it because that type of shop back then, we're doing lighted and illuminated signs, and I know Brilliant Signs did some illuminated signage as well as this crazy cool stamped letter backed, on these glass fascia signs. That it's just such cool work.
They patented those letters, and the trade called them Brilliant Letters.
Okay,
that was what they were called. And when you can understand why, if you see them outside at night, they catch every tiny bit of light because they were gilded onto the copper.
Mm-hmm.
They had a fantastic surface, and very smooth. And I get about 80% with the way we do it, but you can never, without having that metal, I don't know how you could quite get it as bright as they did.
What substrate are you using then for your letters? Because I've seen,
don't
you get some vacuum formed every now and then? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we do it all with vacuum form. I found an old vacuum former outside of my friend's barn, and it was sitting there with a tarp over it.
Yeah.
And she works for the BBC effects, or she did for the effects department. And it had been thrown out years ago, and she took it, and it made the Daleks for the old Doctor Who.
Oh, really?
Back in the 70s and 80s.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So I got hold of this and we fixed it. And so what we do now is we try to replicate the Brilliant Science process. So whilst they would have invested quite a lot of money, well, in equivalence, it was millions of pounds really in their dies that they made.
Dies, and
so they had wooden
big heavy duty,
Well, they would have been done on a fry press, I think, but they made them in. I think they cast them in iron and then fettled them down, cleaned them up.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's how they did them. Although they did do wooden ones, I think for the main alphabets they made metal.
So real quick on that, just so as you move forward with this, so you had a catalog of letter sets and heights.
Let's see.
And what we can do, Ash, just so you know, what we can do is after we do this,
we'll take some photos,
connect and we'll get some photos, and then we'll have them dropped in on post. So
just for this one, I'll just show you the page. I did have it open, and of course I've just closed it as we were talking. But the point about ours now is that, here we go. If you can see it, let's have a look.
Oh yeah.
But we'll offer this in a bit later.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll offer a proper picture of that later. But what I did, I thought the way I can do it is CNC carve it on the into MDF.
Yep.
And then we make that as the mold pattern, and then we vacuum form it into plastic, spray it and gild the plastic. But you don't have all the cleanup time of the MDF. If you spray, if you want to gild MDF and carve into it, there's a lot of sprayer filler. Sanding down.
It's like
there's a lot of there's tons of work in it, and there's a lot of registration problems on a shop front with big boards,
right? Trying
to get everything to line up, and it gets rid of all the weight. So it's perfect, for the process. It gives you flexibility in that you can do any pattern. It's not like your Brilliant Science where you've got to make something quite time consuming to make an individual job.
Right.
And whereas they had the option then of selling just alphabets, and
Mm-hmm.
people would use the alphabets.
Yep.
You know, people these days are so much logo and brand driven. Not that that said, I mean, all my work is my own lettering, really.
Right.
I'm really lucky. The customers I get, they just let me do pretty much my own thing. Well, and it's what a great place to be it is now. I mean, it's not like the old days where you might have got 15 years ago. My wife's really good with words for windows, and she's drawn up a design here. Can we use this? And it's all brush strip capitals on an arc.
It's
and
the worst. The
yeah,
worst.
we've all been there. And
Yep.
some of, you know, but these days I don't get any of that. I don't get anything. I just get people who want me pretty much to do my interpretation of it. And I am so lucky for that. I just love it. You know, my customers are incredible. I really appreciate them they put up with a lot from me. So,
well, because you got a special product, and I think they want that. You know, they don't want you know, they want that Ashley Bishop, that brilliant signs. You know, so
yeah,
you know,
and also, you know, I have customers of all. Well, the old catalog would have said customers of all classes or something. You know, I have people who've, you know, have got really well-to-do setups and earn fortunes, and then I get the smallest shop that's, you know, hand to mouth, because I just price it to sell it because I want it out there, and that's always been my game. I mean, I get told off a lot about it, but so
what do you mean by who?
Well,
Your peers?
Some peers,
Yeah.
sometimes my wife when I'm moaning we haven't got any money, or but it has to be. If it's not affordable to a shopkeeper who has some pride in their shop front, then, and they're willing to invest, you know, a little bit more in it, then I'm not doing my job, is how I see it.
No, that's,
you know,
that's,
I wanted
that's interesting. I think. Go ahead.
Sorry,
no, you
if
go
I
ahead.
wanted to be I would have been an artist otherwise, you know, and I would have priced accordingly. But I'm not. I'm a sign maker, and the only way you're a sign maker is if you're putting signs out there and getting paid for them.
That is very true. Yeah, I get that. You know, oh, you guys are artists, and while I appreciate the sentiment, I look at what we do as a craft and a trade.
Yeah, the amount of times I'm doing shop fits, and the lads have been there for 6 months doing a shop fit.
Yeah,
and the sign goes up, and everyone's gooey all over it.
Yeah,
and they all look at you and they think, wow. And I always apologize to them. I say, look, boys, it just comes with the territory. Basically, we're bricklayers with color.
Right.
But yeah, we do get the glory. We are the pretty boys of the whole building.
Yeah, it's the cherry on top, you know.
Yeah.
We recently, you know, so my wife came on board that would be about 2 years ago in November, to really handle driving growth and sales and all that.
Yeah.
And so she started doing these sign lighting events. You know, we'll install the sign and make sure they keep it off. These are for like the cool, like neon signs and you know, and so that's it. It's like, you know, they did this great work on the architecture of the building, all the fit and interior and exterior, and then not a lot of praise, and then the sign goes up, and you know,
it's all and then all the lads on site say, oh, look at you, you get all the praise.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
But you were asking about brilliant signs and the history. Let me give you a little brief history. As I'll go as quick as I can, but basically in 1888 in Clerkenwell in London, the company started, and they started with this patented letter called the Brilliant Letter. So someone had already patented it. So, you know, got a trademark. Well, not a trademark, but they patented the ingenious device, I think is the word in the legislation. And off the back of that, they started the company, which grew really quickly. So by the late 1800s, they had about 4 acres of workshops over at the other side of London in Shepherd's Bush.
Wow.
And had hundreds of people by then. But they had departments doing shop fitting, bronze shop fronts. They had a metal workshop and a foundry. They had enameling kilns. They had mirror shops. They had obviously had the sign writers. They had the wood shop. They had the pressing department. I mean, they just grew. And there's a little bit of the history that's kind of missing about how did that grow so fast? What happened in them 10, 15 years? I mean, the history of the time, 1880s in the UK was a huge expansion era. We were really, we were feeding the empire, with all the tooling and the manufacture for a whole empire was really London and Birmingham and Glasgow and a few of the other big cities. So there was money and there was expansion, and it was off the back of that, I think, that how this sort of simple idea with a few guys grew so quickly. But it was an ingenious idea, an ingenious time. People worked hard and there was expansion going on. I think they were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Craftsmanship was everywhere and there was a huge market to satisfy. So they grew this big. So by the 30s, they had 400 people. Yeah, I mean, and what I wouldn't do for a little walk around the workshops. And I've been lucky enough to work there, over the years and chat to them about it. And they all say the same thing. It was a big family. And everyone who worked there pretty much lived within 2 or 3 roads of the Paragon Works. And one interesting thing that I know you'll get, and I know all the other sign writers out there will get, and certainly any other letterheads will get, but one guy who worked there from the late 50s to the 70s told me we were all sign writers and we were all not out competing each other, but doing things to kind of look for validity with our peers, with the sign writers around us.
100%.
And whilst we didn't earn any money, he said, but when your pal said to you, "That's beautiful, mate, you've done a great job," that was the satisfaction of the sign trade. And it's no different now. You go, you've right. Asked me on here, or I do it for my pals who are all sign writers.
Ash, just last night. So Thursday nights. So we work 4 10-hour shifts. So usually people are off on Fridays. So we hang out on the loading dock, drink some beers, and smoke a little smoke. And just last night I was talking about. I'm like, just before you go on, Dan, sorry. Just edit this bit out for the actual video. Don't let Sarah and Alan and that hear that you get Fridays off, because I'll have all sorts of staff troubles, right? And there'll be insurrection. And, just edit that bit out. Well, sorry, carry on. You were on the dock and you were. I am working Fridays, Ash, but most of the production and field crew, they are off usually. So
don't like I say, just edit that out. We don't need it going over here finding out.
But just talking last night about. In the end, I don't give a shit if I want my peers to appreciate the work. When we talk about at the shop, fit and finish, we've got a fit and finish system. We rate it 1 through 3 for different types of projects, so they have some clarity on like how far to go. But I'm like, if one of my peers walks up to it and they put their hand on it and they're walking around it and they walk away going, "That was built quite well," then I'm happy. Then I'm happy. Because they're the discerning ones, the ones that know how these get built. And so I take a lot of and even I built 2 motorcycles, and I only care what my friends think about it. That's it. That's all I care about. So, I
haven't quite got that far with vehicles yet. I'm still learning my mechanicing after building the truck, but Lewis mainly built that, and Nobby, a mate of mine, he's another sign writer, works with us from time to time, but Lewis did a lot of the work on it, and I'm still trying to attain that perfection level in the mechanicking. That's to come.
I stay away from motors. For me, I like making things, building stuff. So so Brilliant Signs, big thing. What happened to it, and when did that happen?
So what happened was it was owned by a guy pretty much from the start called Frederick George Lucas, and Fred I think he was an accountant. I don't think he was a sign writer. I think he basically bought the patent and started the company and got the right shop sort of manager in. I'm sure that's how it happened. But he died, and remembering he had 400 odd people in the firm, he left his shares in the firm in equal parts to everyone who worked there.
Wow.
So what happened? I met the managing director. Well, he wasn't the managing director. He was the works director who ran it after then, and he said it was almost impossible to run because the guy that swept the workshop floor had as much voting rights and rights in the company as
Right.
the sort of managing director, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
it became all chiefs and no Indians.
Too
I
many
think it was hard
chiefs.
work.
Yeah.
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 And but it was unique, you know. And also when Fred died, he was very innovative, you know, always looking for technology in the future. And they had delivered lots of signs by planes. I suppose the equivalent today would be a drone, but it's a bit geekier than going in a DC-3. Yeah. So for his funeral, he was cremated, and then he got all the staff to line up in the yard, and the aircraft went over. I've got a photo of the aircraft somewhere, and the aircraft went over, and his ashes were scattered over them all, looking up.
That's so great. That's such a
But
cool story.
The company got sold. So I think, you know, it was becoming harder to manage, and the company was sold to a London development firm who were a shop fitting company who'd taken on the boom in London property in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And that just coincided with what comes after a boom, a bust.
Yeah.
And the company, they were overextended, and the company went out of business.
When was that?
That was 1977.
77. Okay.
Yeah. So, but they had war work. I was talking to one of the guys, said to me that all the young guys obviously went away to fight, but the older blokes and like the shop manager and the senior sign writers were all left, and their war work was basically going around London, either painting air raid signs or putting tape on the windows, you know, to stop the glass fragmenting on explosions.
Wow.
So they had these sort of ultimate craftsmen just going around taping up windows.
And this is in 77?
Yeah. No. Oh no. Sorry. No. But that was their war work. So
yeah. Okay.
The whole factory got requisitioned for the war, but they also built the wings for mosquito fighters, which are a bit like your Lightnings.
Okay.
30. I think they were similar to that. So the shop was also used to manufacture the wooden wings for those.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I mean you know, some of those war efforts, we didn't know if the Sign Art Studio was going to get roped in. I don't want to get too far into the COVID conversation because you and I have shared a couple conversations about that. I think we're on the same page, but I didn't know. I'm like, well, shit. You know, our neighbors were all of a sudden making masks. You know, like the plastic things, and it's interesting though. And when you know war efforts, they're like, well, no, now your shop is doing this. You know,
I'm making perspex screens for counterfronts and things.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting when you actually look into the usefulness of all of that, but just remember, stay skeptical.
I'm with you, Ash. So then you purchased the namesake? How did that happen, and what did you get, or how did that go? How's that?
The company had ceased to exist. The company being a sort of legal entity in itself, it ceased to exist. So, in fact, the Brilliant Sign Co. ceased to exist in 1937, and they became Brilliant Signs, just Brilliant Signs then. So I just re-registered the company name. I re-registered the trademark. All of it was done just for a registration fee, because nothing of it existed anymore. So there was nothing left. But all the way through, I mean, I was encouraged to do it by a guy who did apprentice there, and he could see I understood a lot about the company. He said, you should do this again. You should start it again. And it's really nice when you meet, I mean, it's getting less and less, but when you meet people who are in the old company and they just love it, you know, it's a really nice reception I always get. I always think, oh no, they'll think I'm some sort of fraud and that, but I've met loads of guys over the years, and they've always encouraged me to do more of it, and they love it. So
well,
I do it for their memory, really, and the memory of all the let's not even say craftsmen, let's just say tradesmen who have built the world we live in, for whatever they do, and none of them really get any praise and any recognition. An architect might, but the bricklayer won't, and the chippy won't. And I always think, you know, that's us, isn't it? That's who we are. We make stuff, and I think of them as much as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think beyond that right now, and I'm not sure what it's like in your neck of the woods, but we're having a shortage in the trades with labor.
Yeah. Well,
Everybody,
that's
it's go to 4-year college, and if that's what you want to do, cool. But it's almost as if the trades have been treated like, it's not as glamorous as some of the other ways to earn a living, which is unfortunate.
no. Well, this is a really interesting thing, and it's something that I really want to delve more into. But I've been looking up statistics over the last few months, and now I'm going to get these wrong now because I haven't looked at it for a month or so. But something like 75% of the building trade in the UK are over 56. You know, why do we send kids to university when 85% of them, perhaps 80% of them, it's the last place they should be? They just rack up debt.
Yep.
I think there are darker sides of university, particularly these days, that your ability to critically think is probably impaired. But
Yep.
I just think why do more kids? They need to go in the trades. There's great money in it. I talk to, even at Eton, where you got some really well-to-do young men. I always say to them, have you ever considered, making stuff? And it's really interesting to hear their replies. It's not everyone's cut out for university. Even if you do well at school, you're not necessarily cut out for university. I can think of lots of people I know who did what they were told at school, did well, then went to university, and when it was kind of on their own back, they didn't really come out well of it, and they've lived a life of kind of mediocrity and disinterest, where a trade thing's great. Not only that, but you get sight humor as well, which I'm pretty sure you don't get in the boardroom.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a, the saying, it's honest work, and it's fulfilling. And at the end, you can see something that your hands have put together. And, I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You become a genuine use to society. Whereas how many people who, I don't know, are in the human resources office genuinely think, God, I'm a real use to society. I'm not picking on human resources. You could be anything on the whole, but how many of those people think that they're a great use? You're a plumber and someone's heating goes, you are the only person they want. You are literally the only person on the planet they want.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I have felt, I think the conversation's been getting louder and louder. And I do feel like there's been a little shift, at least, locally. My wife and I are part of a local group that, we're trying to support the high school and the middle school with some of the tech classes and whatever ways we can. So I think, in some ways there's people that are seeing the light, so hopefully it continues in that direction. But yeah, like you're right. The average age of some of these, people are not getting any younger. It's getting older and older and older.
Another great, like, we have a lot of veterans leaving the forces over here, and I think they could be so well used by filling these places. A lot of these roles, they're resourceful. They've got initiative. They would be excellent. Yeah, and a lot of them are in their mid-20s. Perfect for sort of re-rolling and rejoining. They've got the right ethics and attitude often for the building trade, which is, it requires you to think on your feet. There's so many things that correspond. So I've been listening to a podcast with some veterans over here who talk about this sort of thing, and I'm hoping that could be a real good source of new people for the building trade.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Let's hope so. All right. So you kind of basically re-registered the Brilliant Sign Company name. And that's a cool story. And I love the history, behind that. And I think what you're doing is cool. You're honoring a company with a special history, that provided, awesome jobs for a lot of people who took pride in the company they work for and the work that they did. So that's pretty neat, Ash.
That's what we try to do,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Letterheads. How
Ah, yeah.
letterheads? When did you get into letterheads and how did that happen?
I right. So I went to a festival, which must have been, I would have thought, '96, and I met a signwriter there,
Mm-hmm.
and he had in the back of he lived in a coach. His name was Goffy, and he lived in a coach and was painting signs on the site. And he said he had on the back of the coach, he had, like, when you put all the luggage, he had his sign shop,
Mm-hmm.
and he showed me
So he's
Signcraft
like
magazine.
he's like what we call like a snapper over here back in the day. He
Yeah, he was something.
traveling
Yeah,
traveling
yeah,
sign painter.
yeah. He was that. He's a bit more of a hippie than perhaps a snapper might have
Okay.
been, but he was a great sign writer. He
All right.
he was great fun. He was, but I don't know if pumping through the work was at the top of his agenda, but he was a great fun and a good laugh. But he had loads of letterhead mags in the boot of this coach, and
Mm-hmm.
showed me them. And I think that's probably what made us sign up for the course. And I remember taking the letterhead mag to college to my tutor on the interview and saying,
Mm-hmm.
I want to do this stuff, and showed him the letterhead. And he said, well, you will be able, you put your effort into it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think that next year, no, that might have been '97. Yeah, no, that would have been '96. Then Stu McLaren did Braveheart,
Mm-hmm.
which was probably that year or the next. It might have been that year, or it was the next year.
And was
So we
that
went
when
up.
you first met Stuart? At
Yeah,
that
I hadn't
meet?
met
Okay.
him.
Yep.
Yeah, I hadn't met anyone, and I went up there, and I mean, it was just, how do you describe it? You can't take it all in, and you feel like you shouldn't be there, which I still often feel like now. You don't deserve to be in the room, and everyone was fantastic. Really, really great to me and Sarah. Really, and we thought, well, we might fit in here, although we didn't feel like we fitted in, but we thought
Right.
we probably could. And that was my first one, and Mike Myers was there,
Okay.
and he was, jumping around like Tigger, like he does. And
Well,
he
he
said,
was still on the drink then.
oh yeah, it was in full effect. And he said to me, hey kid, you want to come to I got a sign meet next year at my place in Mazeppa, you got to come. And I thought, he's joking, he doesn't, doesn't want us to come. And then he messaged me. I don't know, well, you couldn't message people in those days. I don't know how you would have done it, probably written or phone me, possibly. We didn't have mobile phones.
Bird messenger, fax machine.
Yeah, could have been that. Could have been a fax. And he said, you got to come over. I think he phoned. He said, you've got to come. I want you to come. I thought, wow, okay. And then when I went to the US to Mazeppa Mustard, so that would have been '99.
Okay.
I mean, that was just. Were you there, Dan?
I was not. No, so that was in '99. That was the year I started at Vital Signs. So I don't know if it was, right. They had already, I don't remember what time of the year I started, but I just missed that meet. Yeah.
But it was incredible. I mean, like, as soon as I got a minibus, I think, from the airport, and I got off the bus, as I hadn't even I had my rucksack on my back, my foot hadn't hit the pavement, and Mike Studebaker was out the front, full of ice and beer in the back, and Stuart had literally seen the thing come in, opened the beer, and thrown it, and it was in the air as I was in the air getting off the bus, and I caught this beer and looked around at all this chaos, and I thought, oh my god, this is going to be special,
Yeah.
And it was, I've become hooked, and the US lads and the Canadian lads that I met out there made me feel genuinely like a brother, or like just so kind to me.
Yeah.
Rick Dolphins and Marv Renter and Dave Carell, Mark Sundell, all these lads just sort of took me under their wing and were so kind to me, and that made me feel like I was in a brotherhood that I really didn't, expect. And I'm saying with the English lads and that, and the English lads, the Scottish and the Welsh lads as well, they'll go mad. But yeah, it's felt like that. But the spectacle, as you can imagine, what Mike put on with dancing girls, monster trucks, buffaloes,
parades, right? parades. I mean,
Parades, chick knife fighting in the WDs after hour. You know, it had it all. It was
yeah,
the World Championships, I think, from what I can recall. This banner said, and yeah, I know all the people I met, and ever since then, you know, you can ring up or email people these days, and you can go and see someone all around the world, and
yeah,
that is a gift that not many things give. You know,
I
not
know.
many things give a gift.
Yeah, it's certainly special. It is something. You know, right when I started at Vital Signs, I knew right away, like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I got fired though right away. Came back,
Well,
but
Mike's a hard taskmaster. You know,
well, you know, I made it very easy for him. We'll put it that way. But no, ever since go to the first Letterhead meet, and it's like, yeah, this is, you know, the hooks are in 100%, and what you learn, the talent that's there is nothing short of inspiring and amazing and otherworldly at times. I watch some of the stuff that get done right there on the spot, and it's mind blowing. You know, it's crazy, and it is that you know, it's where that the art does. You know, there's art, and there's the craft and the trade, and but yeah, man, what a special thing Letterheads is.
It is a gift. I mean, there's not many other trades. I think this is where we can humbly and safely separate ourselves from the other trades, but you'll never find plumbers in a shed out the back of somewhere at 3:30 in the morning.
No.
Comparing solder joints, where we'll be out there signing. I can remember being in. Mike had commandeered. I think it was a garage opposite his, just over the road from WD's. Actually, it was, and there were all the easels in there. And then we were in there drinking. It would have been Dave Carell's grain belt. I think he kept the grain. And all of a sudden we realised it was like 3:45 in the morning, and we thought it was probably 11 because it got a bit quiet. And we were back out there probably at 8. We were always certainly in WD's for breakfast, and keep that going for a few days.
I know.
There's no plumber does that, no bricklayer,
No.
so we can safely say we're a bit different.
It's and expanding beyond just letterheads, I don't know of another trade where, you know, at least in terms of what we do, you know, our product, designers, architects-ish, engineers, we spray apply paint, welders, fabricators, electricians, we operate heavy equipment, we do concrete work. I don't know of anything else that exists in terms of a way to make money than the sign trade. It's pretty fucking
It is. Nothing's like that. And the only thing that probably rivals us for soul, I'd say, is musicians.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot that, you know, there's not a lot that rival it. In fact, I'm hoping next month to go to something called the Metal Meet in Illinois, which is a bit like Letterheads, but for cheap metal coach building and that.
When?
So, can you hear me?
Yeah. When are you going to Illinois, which is just south of me?
Yeah, to Oblong. It's the town. It's about down by Marshall, where I went to one of the Wall Dogs events.
Okay.
But I haven't booked it yet. I've got to just see how things open out. But I will certainly let you know a bit. But I'd be really interested to see the similarities, between that and Letterheads. And I can't imagine the soul can run quite as deep, especially at 4 in the morning.
I put some notes in the outline, so we won't mention names, but on the topic of Letterheads, and the first time I met you at a glass meet in Spearfish, South Dakota, Gold Rush.
I've got a photo somewhere at the front. I found 2 or 3 photos of that event.
Did you? Yeah, if you got them, let's
see if you can see this one. So that was front of Tim Peterson's workshop.
Yep, Tim's shop sign.
I found the entry into Spearfish.
Yep, Tim made that sign as well. Look at that.
A general shop view. Can you see that, Billy?
I do.
And then look, this is a cracker. I can't find anything with us lot in it, but I found Dave Carell silicon ingrained.
A grain belt pyramid.
Look at
Oh,
that.
that's so good.
That's in the Smithsonian or somewhere
That
now.
should be, yeah. But yeah, talking about partying. So anyway, I had you were there, Stuart, Scott, right? Was there as well?
What I've got here. There's another photo. I don't know if this is going to be viewable, but I'm going to put this online so you can see it.
I've seen that one. Yes.
You can't get it from the reflection, but basically that's the whole crew, and that was taken in Deadwood.
Yeah.
Afterwards, but there's Stu, Mike, Scotty, me, and Wee Brian, who was
Wee Brian. Yes, yeah. I remember Brian. Yeah.
But
yeah, party.
Come, they don't get much better than that.
God, it was so good. So good. Yeah, but I'm painting you know, a gentleman that we mutually know said, "Hey, we're going to lunch. Are you interested?" I'm like, "You know what? I'm going to hang back. I'm going to paint." And they were just gone forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And I'm like, "What the hell's going on?" And Tim Peterson comes up, kneels down next to me, said, "Hey, so and so are in jail in the Deadwood jail." And yeah, they
shared it in good company. I mean, if you're going to get locked up somewhere, Deadwood is the place to do it. I mean, it's got some kudos.
Oh man! And then later that night is when we went to Deadwood, and we partied in a bar, and the jail was across the street.
That's right. Yeah.
And I had the time of my life. There was a cute girl that I was making out with. It was, it met you guys.
Oh, well, that was the night with the fight in the wet t-shirt competition with the gay cowboy. Who fancied Brian?
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't get any better. If you want to see, that's Andy Warhol levels of surrealness. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It was just brilliant that night.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was perfect and unfortunate, obviously, that our friends were there. But but it's for the history books, you know.
It is. Yeah. I still wish I'd actually got one of the wet t-shirts after the cowboy style brawl on the dance floor.
Oh man,
I haven't got one, but that would have been a thing to have owned.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, Stuart. God, what a fun night.
It was when the cowboy's name was, I can still remember his name, but rather than use names, let's just call his last name Calhoun. When he mounted Stuart's back, yes. And Stuart leant forward and he went across to one of those, what do you call them, poser tables with all the bottles off.
Yep.
So the table went, the glasses went, the beer went. Let's say Calhoun was skidding across the wet dance floor with beer and the wet t-shirts. And then that's when everyone sort of took exception. His friends on there with us.
Oh God!
Theme from the Blues Brothers.
Yeah. Then the Deadwood duo. There was a sign made for the next year, the next meet. Yeah. What a great time. Folk and Ale, was, you talk about, stepping off the plane or whatever and having, beer toss in your hand. I remember landing in Heathrow, and you picked us up in your van, and I remember being in the back of a van. There was no windows.
So that's when we had a lot of people to move, didn't we? Yeah.
Yep. So I don't know. I don't know where we're going. And then we pull in to your place, and you had this meet, and it was so special. And I remember opening a gate, and I'm like, it looked like another world. You had the caravans parked everywhere, and the tent set up. Stuart, I believe, was standing there having some inspiration, and he was watching, no shirt on. He was real sweaty, and there were two dogs humping each other, little bulldogs or something, and Stuart's just standing there laughing his ass off. And that was my intro into coming overseas. All of this, like, boom, boom.
That's why he was all sweaty. He loves a bit of dog on dog action.
Right. So I was wondering. But that was such a killer meet. And I remember working on that Scania
semi. And I've got photos of all this, which I'll send to you.
Do you?
I found about 10 photos of it, yeah.
But Stuart was showing, I think both of you, like Frisket on a gilded letter and
Yeah,
burnishing it to look like 3D carved.
yeah. He
Um,
was the inventor of that. Really,
oh,
he really pioneered that.
it's so cool. I just and I've later adopted that, but on doing it with like on aluminum and
Yeah, yeah,
and yeah, that was and who else was there? Was the letter knight? Was he?
yeah. Johnny was there. Yeah.
Was that the one who had the one with the big pot leaf glass piece? Was that him?
Oh, no, that was Paul Ivy Designs.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't hear. I think Paul's out of the game. I think he got into graffiti or something, sort of professional graffiti, whatever that is.
Really?
But
Okay.
yeah, he got kind of into that. But I think yeah, I haven't heard or seen from him for many years. But that was definitely his piece. That was a nice bit.
I
Of
was
glass.
blown. I'm like, this is I've a reverse glass. Wasn't it like etched the pot leaf and airbrushed?
Yeah, it was lovely.
Oh,
I've
so
probably
good.
got a photo of it somewhere. I looked through all my photos this morning, and I didn't see a photo of it. But I've got a load here that I'll send the poignant ones over.
Awesome.
But that was a special piece. And Nigel Eden did that Letterheads logo from the magazine, the Amel logo, on the back of a piece of glass.
Yep.
And I remember someone saying to him, "How did you?" He said, "This is so tight. How did you get your screen registration so good?" And Nigel looked around and said, "What do you mean screen?" And he went, "Well, you screen printed." And he goes, "Is that how you do it?" And he didn't know. He thought you just sign wrote it. So he
all with a brush,
screen printed all with a brush. He was incredible.
Yeah.
And he didn't even know you could screen print it. It was hilarious.
Oh well, and Dave Smith. David Smith, didn't he have that handover piece? Was there that AS handover glass piece?
Yes, it was. Yeah. With the it's like Art Nouveau lettering and that on it. Yeah. That was
some like mind blowing. And then who is the gentleman that works with the blended transparent blends over?
Alan Brindle.
Alan Brindle. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Al sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but Alan was a great inspiration to me and a really technically knowledgeable about paint and painting, the fairground work, folk work. He was a top chap, and he did me untold favors and was so kind to me. He did the logo for the meet, which I've got the sign from the meet, which I'll take a photo of to send over to you because that was really cool.
I'd love to see that. He gave me I took it on a plane too, which I don't know that you could do now. But yeah, he gave me a little half quart of that. It's like a gold.
Flamboyant.
Yes, the flamboyant. Yeah. I still have it. It's still good.
It's probably worth a fortune now. You can't get it anymore, especially the Keats ones.
Yeah. And then we did the pub tour. And I remember half of it. Half of it.
People, we started off with the best of intentions, didn't we? But it went downhill a bit, and then we got split up and went off in different directions, and some people fell by the way.
Oh, I remember the first we went to, was it a place called the Blackfriars or the
the Blackfriar on Blackfriars Bridge,
and then we were at another couple, and then at a point my memory evaded me, and I do remember being waiting for the underground urinating on the gangplank or whatever you guys call it, and having like a security guard would like busted me. I remember a flash of that. But the worst part was the next morning I woke up feeling great, and I'm like, oh man, like, woo, feel good, having a good day, walking around. I don't remember at that point. I don't remember.
I remember you saying you didn't remember.
And the day Cal Trotter, Cal was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, Cal was there, yeah.
Cal came up to me and he's like hand on my shoulder. He's like, how you doing this morning, Dan? And I'm like, fine. Why? Why would you ask? But as the day progressed, I'm like, I kept little snippets come back to me, and I'm like, oh man, these are like my heroes, and I just acted a buffoon.
I think there was a really cool photo of you, Mike, and Mark, and a few others going down an escalator. It's not one of my photos, and there was like a reflection. You could see glass, and you could see a reflection of you all in the same photo, and you're all hammered. Some of you were more hammered than others.
Yes.
But it was an amazing photo, and I can't remember who had it, but I remember seeing it, and it was pretty special. It was great photo.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that. But yeah, that was such a special meet. Yeah.
It was there. No, I mean, I think there were 200 odd people here, and incidentally, Goffey, you met Goffey. He was here. He was the one that signed right out the back of the coach that I told you how I met him. He was the one that had the van here, the Mignana no work team van. But you definitely met him here too. Speaks like that. Always got a rub with his mouth, and he always says stuff like, "Hey, I'll tell you a little story about me." And a Taiwanese hooker in the Bangkok Hilton, and then he elaborates, and that was Goffey. That was him.
Yeah. Well,
but every story he's got starts. It doesn't matter if he's telling you how to fix a carburetor, paint a board. They always start exactly that way that I just told you.
Yeah, that's funny. And Dave Kinniston was working on that.
The William Wood sign.
Yeah,
that's still up.
Is it?
Yeah. It's out the back of it's still in the same place.
Yeah, I remember. Of course, he didn't say it like this because he's a lot more articulate. But basically, like, you're a bitch if you use tape on your letters. Because he doesn't use tape, right?
No,
he won't tape his.
I don't know why you wouldn't need it, Dan. I mean, you don't need it. It gets in the way. You can't really do a proper. You can't do a proper letter if there's tape there, Dan. You've got to do it. Without it, you've got to.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yep. That is Dave.
Not that I know how it talks.
Well, he kept because we kept using some Coke can for some inspirations, and he'd call me like, "Oh, with your Coke can down."
I think he still says that. Actually.
He does.
Have you not got your Coke can, Stuart?
Yeah. Do you talk much to Dave?
Yeah, we Stu, me and Sarah, Scott, and Katie all went up there to stay with him in, I think it might have been March.
Okay.
So we had three days up at Dave's. It was great fun, like the old days, really. Brilliant. But Dave does his main work now is honours boards, really.
Okay.
And presentation rowing oars. Racing style.
Yep.
He does them, and they are. I don't even know where you start when you look at them. I don't know where his brain starts, where he comes up with these things that are. You couldn't even imagine it, let alone draw it, let alone paint it. And they're incredible.
He's massively talented, talented, and he could ride a trials bike.
He can. Mm-hmm. He's got the trials. He's got a trials course now in his woods up on the farm.
That's so good.
When we were up there, it was packed. I think there was probably 70, 80 people up there that weekend using
cool.
There was no event going on. They just come up to practice, and then there'll be event days, which is even busier. But no, Dave's a one-off. I don't think there's many more of him around.
No, he's a special guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's jump to what do you we spoke about a little bit in the beginning what you're up to today. You do these this faux neon thing, right? Or is it real neon? Yeah. I haven't quite figured it out because I haven't got my eyes on it in person yet.
It started years ago, like donkeys years ago. I did when you deep sandblast glass and edge light it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I did a load of them for like London office blocks with sort of floor numbers and the companies on slats. They all went into these sort of anodized frames with edge lighting on.
Yep.
And I remember being up in London late one night thinking, I know there's more you can do with this, something really cool.
Yeah.
But had no idea what it was, but I knew there was potential for something. And it had always sort of sunk around the side of my head. Oh, what could I do? Never got it. Then we did a course. I think it was in Letterheads at Amsterdam, Sarah and I taught some gilding there, and there was a super talented Aussie sign writer, Vicky Crazy Paint on Instagram.
Okay.
And she was a great art. She's that perfect combination of when you've got a really brilliant artist and a brilliant sign writer, loads of tutorials in her work and everything.
Yeah.
But she painted, I saw a photo of something she painted, and basically it was for like a diner, and it just had channel lettering with neon in.
Mm-hmm.
And it painted just a first surface, just a signboard. And as soon as I saw it with the reflection of the tubes raised up and that, I thought, that's it. So I messaged her and I said, look, I want to completely rip off your work, but would you be prepared to be the what I call her, the godmother, or patron saint of reverse glass neon? But I've got an idea.
Yep.
And I basically painted the style of letter that she'd done, but I introduced acid etching and some silver in and things like that on it. And the first ones, we deep sandblasted the neon tube, and we painted them with, Vitrol, Vitrex, the glass, translucent glass paint, sort of craft hobbyist paint, and then edge lit them. And they work quite well, but there's an awful lot of work in blasting those deep tubes into the glass.
Oh, I bet.
And it comes with a few downsides, and the light isn't that strong. So then we tried translucent vinyl over the tube bit and put just LED lights behind it, and that it worked. It looked good, but then I saw the neon LED neon and thought that might be the stuff. And if I could do real neon, if I could wire a plug, I would not be doing this. But because I couldn't, I was thinking, what can I do? But I mean, neon is something that, with a pal of mine who was really keen on it, and I said, look, we could start it here if he wanted to put the time into learning it. I said, I'll get the kit, but he didn't quite have the kind of commitment to do it. But I would absolutely love to have had a neon department here, because it fits with the heritage side of everything. And it's like, I'm still really keen that Lewis, my son, coming over to you just to get a feel of the incredible work that you guys do. And is loaded almost in TIG welding, is it? Or
we do some TIG, a little bit if it's exposed weld and we want it pretty, but mainly it's all MIG welded. But yeah, we do.
What about the channel letters? How do you do your built up? So they sold it.
We actually, up until December of last year, if we were building channel letters, we cut out the backer on a CNC, aluminum backer, 060 thickness, and then hand form to the backer edge, and then spot weld with a spool gun. So all of it was hand formed, and any of the other projects that didn't have some cool factor, we'd buy out those letters, because we didn't want to mess with them. But we did just buy a CNC letter bender the end of last year. So it comes on a coil. You get a coil stock of raw aluminum and feed it through, and it bends all your returns, and then you weld it. And then we can doing like painted channel letters. But for doing kind of cheaper, quicker channel letters, they're a pre-finished aluminum. So the paint on one side already, or two sides. And it runs it through, and it bends it, and then it also makes a flange on the bottom, so you can staple your backer to it.
Oh man, I love stuff like that. I remember seeing that machine when I came over in '99. Seeing what was it called? Midwest Sign Supplies.
Yep.
One of the lads that worked there, was it Big Dan, or
I don't know back then. I'm not sure back then, but Midwest Sign Supply, they were in just outside of Milwaukee.
They either had anyway, they had the catalog of the machine, whether they supplied it or not, and they were showing me it and telling me how it works. And what a tool! I mean, I love things like that. I think it was cool.
Well, back in the day, those machines were huge. I mean, they're as big as this freaking table. They're huge. The one we got now is in a pretty small package, and it also has for the trim cap for the faces. You glued up trim cap. You ever done that before?
With like a stainless or a polished stainless sort of effect or something like that.
No, this is it's a plastic
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, that you
Yeah.
glue onto the acrylic
Yeah.
face. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got the trim cap thing. So what it does is it feeds the trim cap through, and it'll make marks where you do
Oh, your fold marks.
outside bends, and then it'll
Yeah.
make notches where there's inside bends, and it spits it out all cut to length.
Yes.
It works. Sometimes you get to the end and you got a 1/4 inch gap, which is no good. So, so there's some fine tuning there, but yeah, that's how we do it now. But otherwise, our cabinet type neon signs, which are my favorite, just surface mounted neon on, fabricated aluminum cabinet.
Painting the can. You hand paint some of the cans, don't you?
We paint. I will not put vinyl underneath neon.
Yeah.
We will not do it.
Good on you.
Yep.
Do you know, Dan, there's something I meant, now you're saying this is something, I went to, when would it have been? Just before COVID, 2019, I did a road trip down south with the Debonair sign man from Atlanta. And we had a big trip out. I wanted to go to the Trog, the Race of Gentlemen.
Yeah.
But we went to the Sign Museum on that whole trip. And out the back, Todd showed me the storage area. And they had these neon cans down the side of the buildings, the long ones.
Yeah.
But where the neon went, the letters had been pressed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So they had like lettering pressed in, then they were vitreous enameled. And I've often wondered, how did they make those? Because the lettering wasn't a standard lettering. Did they make a tool for it, or did they make them on a Pool Max, or how on earth did they do it?
How thin did that metal? Was it?
Well, it wasn't thin. I would have thought it was. I can't remember what it would be in imperial, but it was probably over a mil, and it was vitreous steel. It might have been a mil.
It could have been a bead roller, because you can.
Yeah, you can do it. I think it's more likely to be a machine like a Pool Max with a wooden template.
Right.
That's one of the reasons I want to go to this metal meet in Illinois, just to talk to people who the guys there that go are all into. They're coach builders, but they're really the Pool Max machine, which is like a reciprocating machine for sheet metal. I'm sure it would have been a tool like that, but the combination of the neon, the vitreous, pressing the letters, I think it's one of the coolest things I'd ever seen this sign.
It is so cool. We get into a lot of really unique stuff, and while I enjoy all of it, well, most of it, there's something about this fabricated aluminum or metal cabinet. We spray it base with a urethane, like a satin. And then go in on top and hand paint the graphics and put the neon with the glass receptacles, that are glass sockets. We have really pushed hard to bring neon, back to our area, and it's neat to see. We've got a couple gems running around, our Madison area, and and my best friend is our neon bender, and is
he in your workshop?
No, he's not. He's got his own shop on the east side of Madison, a one-man operation. Tom Zicker, Neon Lab. I'm going to get him on the podcast. He's
fantastic.
My best buddy. In fact, I'm going to go visit him this afternoon. But
buy him a drink from me.
But if you got to get up here, so if you're going to go to Illinois, we're right up the road. We can get you over to Tom's, his neon shop. He also teaches neon at the University of Wisconsin. So
does he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yep. And he's the same ilk as us. It's so it's really neat. There's just something about that that form of lighting. It's science, it's craft, it's it's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything.
And it has so much soul, there's
it
like the glass signs, it has a visceral effect on you, whether visceral is the right word, but it has an emotional effect. When I see a glass sign, it has an effect that is deeper than just eye level, and neon is exactly the same. You might remember this, Dan. Mike, when we were at Mike's and we'd go on the road trips, and it would have been at Spearfish,
Yeah.
I used to take a book out of Mike's library on every trip we did. So I've probably done 8,000 or 9,000 miles of this book. But every time I go, I take it off his cabinet.
Yeah.
And it was called Car Hops and Drive-ins, I think.
Okay.
And it was the history of drive-ins and car hops.
Yeah.
But what it really is a history of signs and design and art. That 30s, I don't want to call it Art Nouveau or Art Deco, because I don't think it really was. It was something more than that.
Yeah.
But the whole book is this. And 2 weeks ago, Sarah and I were watching The Founder, you know, the movie about McDonald's and how it kind of started. And I was telling Sarah about the book, and she looked it up, and she found a copy in the States on Aid Books, and it came 2 days ago.
Oh, really?
The style in every page of that, and the quality of the signage, it's better than a book on glass signs to me. It's really, really special.
There's a term, I think they call it, and don't quote, like Googie architecture from that period, where it's, and maybe we're thinking, but if you're thinking diners, about it's probably that same period, but like that kind of, you know, big rocket type things that are integrated into the building architecture, and it's so,
with a big sort of, almost like a sail coming out the roof in neon, you know. Incredible.
Even the original McDonald's buildings
was like
with
that.
The arches.
Yeah. That's right, exactly where that part of it, wasn't he? He was saying we just want a gold and and obviously the gold was neon. It was it was the modern neon. Modern gold, I mean. It was it was the
bling of that era. Yeah.
But think, much like I always think, you go into a cathedral over here that was built 1,000 years ago, and you were you know, a peasant visiting the city somehow, and you went into the cathedral and looked up at the stained glass windows and the color coming through it, which still amazes now. So 1,000 years later, we're still transfixed by this spectacle of light and emotional effect to that light. Neon is exactly the same. Neon, I can't imagine what the people in the 20s and the 30s that saw it, and you could have been at, you know, an Oklahoma road junction and seen this, and you probably hadn't gone out, you certainly wouldn't have gone out your state, but you see this color and modernism coming to your town. It must have been a really, you know, a special period in architecture.
Absolutely. There's have you ever seen it? If you haven't, write it down. Neon. It's just called Neon, and it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
it's a documentary on neon. You'd have to type in like neon documentary.
Right, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, you haven't? Oh, no, you're gonna love it. It talks about, it's obviously the history of neon, but they show like Times Square back when neon first hit in Times Square, and these massive billboards that were just grids for neon, and like Wrigley Spearmint, the gum, you know, had this like, it looked like the package of gum was flying at you, and it was all neon and massive. We're talking like 30-foot tall, 40-foot tall by 80-foot wide of neon, or like the cowboy was blowing smoke smoke rings. And then they talk about the history of Las Vegas and what they called spectacular signs. So, you know, that was kind of the first Yesco signs. You familiar with Yesco, the history or anything like that? Young Electric Sign Company.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
They were kind of the pioneers of what was called a spectacular sign, which basically means a big ass, crazy cool neon sign that might be 80 to 100 foot tall. And it talks about Vegas, Fremont Street. It's cool. And you see these guys up there working, you know, they're on their little bosson's chair or the rope suspended down, you know, on these massive rooftops, and it's wild stuff.
And that's one of those things of circumstances coming together to enable that, because there couldn't have been many places in the world that could have funded that extent of neon artistry, apart from Vegas, you know, to really get it going. I mean, the cost of something like that, I can't imagine what it was, but it's the perfect amalgam of like a craft skill and enough cash and the need to attract every single eye to your casino.
Yeah. And
yeah,
some mafia, right? Some mafia money.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that would that been during Prohibition as well, when that sign was made? Would it have been mid-20s, late
No,
20s?
probably not in Vegas, but out in Times Square, yeah. Yeah, when they were doing it in Times Square. And I don't know, because neon didn't get here until, and really in full effect, late 20s, maybe into the early 30s. So light bulb marquees were where it was at until neon came.
You just reminded me, when you said that, there's another thing I've got the real urge to do. Now,
What's
know
that?
the old pre-light bulb signs? Do you remember the pierced can? It would be a metal can box with pierced lettering, like a hole poked through, but the hole has still got a flange attached and is bent up inside it. Punch tin, I think they call them.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm really desperate to make one of them. I've been thinking about it for 3 years now.
Well, they have what are the other one? And maybe we're talking about the same thing, but it's almost like there's like a piece of glass, like round, like buttons of some kind.
They're like a jewel or something, aren't they? But these ones, take a circle, and imagine a circle is a clock. Take from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. That bit isn't cut through. That's just a tab, a flange.
Sure.
And then the whole 3/4 of the circle, if you like, or a bit more, is bent back inside the sign.
Yeah. Okay.
Then there was a couple of bulbs inside, and there was sign written on the front, or Smolston sign written. And then that was your hanging illuminated sign from probably 1910 till the 20s, say, or late 20s, till neon really took over and bulbs. But that is one that could be a really vintage style now.
Yeah.
And I'm so keen to make one, but haven't quite worked out how you could do it. I think I've got an idea. You could do it with a laser cutter, but they had a brutal and quick way of doing it.
Well, we're actually, it's funny you say that. We're working on, we're doing these big logos for Ally Insurance. They're a big insurance company. And they were designed by these architects, and one of the faces is punched. So we made, it's punched. We use real thin because it's all a blackened steel finish on it. So we used a real thin, I don't know, probably like 20 gauge, galvanized or steel, mild steel. But we're not making letter shapes. We're just doing a pattern. It's kind of like a starburst pattern. And Kirk made 3 different tools. One's like a half moon shape, and then 2 different hole punch, and so it's kind of a neat look. Yeah.
That's probably how they made them. But the gauge of the metal always felt a bit thick. But I suppose you could have rigged up some sort of little hammer or something rather than do it by hand with a bit of a weight and a pulley, just knocking it down onto a punch. But I'll send you some photos over. We need to have a think about it.
I would love to. Yeah.
No one's ever recreated them. In fact, those small batch signs did make a replica of a Ford one, which was vitreous enameled afterwards and was incredible. But he laser cut that one, I think. But it'd be lovely to know how the originals were made. That's the only one I've ever heard of being remade.
Yeah, that's neat. So you vitreous enamel, which we called porcelain enamel. Yep. And that's neat. I think there's one place left in the country here in the States, in Chicago, that does it.
Is there?
Yeah. But other than that, there's no one doing it anywhere. I know we've talked about, you're like, man, I'd love to do it,
Well, I've got a kiln. I bought a kiln during lockdown on eBay. It had come out of a fire damaged company.
Okay.
And it had just been, the insurance had paid to everything new. So this was there, and it wasn't expensive. It was like about $2,000, I think. But it's like a 5 foot by 5 foot kiln. It's big enough to do most things.
Yeah.
But I just bought it because it was there, and then no one seemed to want it. And it's in the shed, and that's something that in the next year or so I've got to get going, so we can do some porcelain vitreous here,
Yeah.
onto glass and onto enamels.
Yeah.
It would be a great thing to do. Although our energy prices are so bloody expensive at the moment that
Your what prices?
the energy, our electricity prices.
Yeah.
We've had this really great idea that I hope doesn't catch on around the rest of the world. But what you do is you electrify everything, and then you close all your power stations down. And they're really surprised when it puts the price up, and you have blackouts. But perhaps that's just us.
No, I could see how that's going to work out well. Yeah.
Works out really well, especially for manufacturing.
Oh man. Well, I tell you what, Ash, we're going on, over an hour here. I want to be cognizant of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, your work has inspired me over the years. Our time together has been special every time.
And you inspire. Don't the inspiration I get out of seeing what you guys do, and Lewis. I've always said to Lewis, look what Dan does. Look how cool what you're achieving is. So I've got to palm him off to you as soon as we can. He's allowed in your country now. He's got.
Well, yeah, I know. He and I were messaging. He's like, "Yeah, apparently I can't come to your country." I'm like, "Yeah, that makes sense." This motherfuckers at the helm here, but whatever.
Well, I think his passport has got Iran, Afghanistan, Russia, Mongolia, Uzbekistan. So that didn't help.
Oh man. Well, what are you so this thing in Illinois, when is that?
Well, I think it's the October the 12th, around then. So I might come over on about the 9th or the 8th. How far are you from Chicago, from St. O'Hare? Are you an hour or 2 hours?
2.5.
So I might get a car, drive over to you and say hello, and then a day or so later drive down to mid-Illinois, which I think is 5 hours?
Yeah. So like so you're flying into O'Hare?
I was thinking of it, yeah.
Yeah. If you fly into O'Hare, even if you don't have time to make it up north to visit, I'll come down and we'll have a cup of coffee or grab lunch or grab a beer. I'm
going to try and come a day early or so and come and see you. And Lewis might be coming with me as well. So we just got to see if we can book on the metal meet, and then I'd love to see you. And
that'd be great.
And thank you for doing what you're doing, and inspiring us, mate, and for doing this podcast.
Well, I appreciate that.
The trade.
It's doing it to again honor my mentors, but also hopefully just get some viewers and people who knew nothing about this cool work that we do find out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, where do you, social media, what's your...
Social media, I only do one thing, and that's Instagram, and it's at Brilliant Signs.
Brilliant Signs, yep.
Yeah.
Go check out Ash's page. It's chock full of all sorts of eye candy. Crazy, awesome work that you do, Ash. Much appreciated. And for the rest, check out our website, makesignsnotwar.com, our YouTube channel, Make Signs Not War TV, and I'm on Instagram as well, Dan Yoder Sign Guy. Thanks again, Ash, for everything, and we'll be in touch soon, and thanks everyone else for tuning in.